Well, if aliens are the thing that many people are likely to be deceived by, then the demons will become aliens, right? They'll be whatever. They'll be whatever's most likely to tempt you. They're bodiless beings, but they can appear in our senses, in our vision.
There's demonic influence inside of people's lives constantly.
Yeah.
And I don't think that they have any tools to be aware of what that is.
Yeah.
And I was hoping that you could kind of walk us through a bit and help kind of show us what those types of things look like so that we can maybe be a little bit more on guard for those things. And if there is actual demonic manifestations in the physical world, what those might look like as well.
So there's this a deep and wide question. So I'll give a bunch of different answers to different parts of it. Demons can appear as whatever they think is most likely to tempt you. So the Orthodox view of things like ghosts and aliens and spaceships is basically that it's demons tricking people according to what's most likely to lead them to a worldview that precludes Christ and Christianity. And this is actually pretty easy to tell. If you look at Hollywood, so I have a psychology degree from UC Santa Barbara, go Gauchos. And there's a very clear-cut phenomenon where, like, for example, multiple personality disorder or dissociative identity disorder, as it's called. Nobody really had that until the movie Crucible came out, which was about this. Then all of a sudden, everyone has multiple personality disorder. So from an Orthodox perspective, Hollywood seeded this idea, and demons realized they could use this to degrade the integrity of a human being, and so started inspiring people with thoughts, oh, maybe you have this, maybe you have this. Oh, look, you have different personalities now. Similarly, when there are a bunch of alien movies coming out, now there's a bunch of alien sightings. You know, there weren't alien sightings before Hollywood started making alien movies. Not really. I mean, of course, there's the biblical stuff, but it's not aliens of like the chariots, the wheel in the sky and whatnot. A great Journey song as well. I don't think Steve Perry was talking about aliens. But in terms of like anal probes and aliens kidnapping you, taking you on the spaceship, this wasn't happening before Hollywood was making movies about it. So when demons realize that a lot of people are into something that can lead them away from Christ, right? Because the whole idea of ETs and other planets is very against biblical cosmology, where humanity is really the peak of creation, and we have this world that was made for us to live on and have dominion over and dominate in a godly way, of course, to glorify God, to be in communion with him. Well, if aliens are the thing that many people are likely to be deceived by, then the demons will become aliens, right? They'll be whatever. They'll be whatever's most likely to tempt you. They're bodiless beings, but they can appear in our senses, in our vision in certain ways. In regards to how this works on an interpersonal level, or like a one-on-one level, so the question is really, where do thoughts come from? And I was actually just speaking with a monk about this, a priest monk about this about a week ago. He brought up the whole transgender thing. He said he actually described them as transgenders, bisexuals, and trisexuals. I hadn't heard of trisexuals before. I think he might have been joking. But the point he was making was that basically our thoughts can come from either God, from ourselves, or from demons. Orthodox call intrusive thoughts logismi. We've been writing about this for almost 2,000 years. Logismi are intrusive thoughts that will go deeper and get worse the more you engage with them, essentially. So let's say you have like a lustful thought. Okay, you can pray the Jesus prayer, cross yourself, do a prostration, it'll dissipate. Or you can start thinking about it and like visualizing the woman or the man or whatever it is you're into, and like engaging your emotions and your mental imagery in it. Well, now it's going to bury itself deeper and deeper into your head. And what the priest monk told me was that the problem with all the trannies and bisexuals and trisexuals is that they think the demonic inspired thoughts, the logismi, are coming from themselves. They don't realize that those thoughts are put in their mind from outside of themselves. So let's say one of these people has the thought, oh, I'm actually, I don't know. I'm not familiar with all the different sexual deviances and perversions that exist. Let's say bisexual. Let's say someone thinks to themselves, oh, I'm equally attracted to men or to women. They think that because the word I'm attracted, in that thought means that it comes from them, that it must be some expression of their subconscious or something, not understanding that a demon just kind of flicked that thought into their head to see if they would engage with it. And if they do engage with it, if they can't discern that the thought is not from God, which they don't believe in half the time anyway, not from themselves, not from their subconscious, not from their own life history and life experience, that thought was implanted in their head from outside. If they can't discern that because they don't believe in the spiritual, right? Don't believe in the demonic, the angelic, God, and Satan, then they're going to make that logismi, that intrusive thought, part of their regular thought process, and they'll build a whole lifestyle out of something that a demon was just tempting them with to see if they'd go for it. It's like fishing. Demons are fishing, right? When you go fishing, you bait the hook to suit the fish. So demons can figure out what kind of fish you are by what kind of bait you go for. If they throw lust at you and you're dispassionate in that way, maybe they'll throw greed at you instead. And in fact, in the Orthodox life, as I'm sure you're discovering, I know you're a recent convert. Congratulations, by the way.
Very recent. There's no place left in the Protestant church for a homophobe like me.
Well, fair enough. As I'm sure you're discovering or will discover soon, let's say you're struggling with lust, right? I'm not saying that you are, Andy. I'm saying you, the general you. Let's say you finally understand through prayer and fasting how to overcome your lust. You're not struggling with it anymore. You think to yourself, I got this. I'm not a sinner anymore, or whatever. The instant you think you're over a sin, it will rotate and the demons will start throwing something else at you instead. So let's say you're over your lust. They can't hit you with that bait anymore. Maybe there's some shady business opportunity that suddenly comes your way and they're going to start scratching at your greed or scratching at your pride. And in some level, the pride is the first thing that gets inflamed when you overcome a sin, because then you think you're awesome, right? Oh, I'm such a strong Christian. I'm such a good person. I'm not masturbating, watching porn anymore. Well, now you're in a worse sin, the sin of pride, which is the sin that made Lucifer fall in the first place. In fact, some of our saints, like Seraphim of Sarov, have said that oftentimes people who really seek God deeply will fall into some really horrible vices just because God is trying to keep them out of falling into pride. And they'll eventually overcome those vices, and they'll still avoid pride once they remember their sins, right? That God's allowing them to fall into this to teach them humility, with the ideal goal that they will overcome these vices, but remember how easily they fell into them, so they won't become prideful. So the sins will rotate because the demons will throw different bait at you. So for people, especially in public schools that are constantly being inundated with tranny propaganda, they're hearing it day in and day out. In fact, I don't know if you saw this, but there were a lot of these people, these SJWs were whining about it. Once the lockdowns happened and the kids were coming home, they weren't going to public school anymore, 80-something% of them, quote, detransitioned. They decided they were actually the gender they were born as. Well, because they weren't being exposed to this demonic propaganda all day anymore. And these evil thoughts was not from themselves, because when they were by themselves, they weren't having the thoughts. The thoughts were being put in their heads by these possessed teachers or these demonically afflicted teachers. And so I think the root of it is a lack of discerning where our thoughts are coming from.